Hey everyone, it looks like the Conservatives are reaching peak desperation at this point. And the established media, well, apparently they're willing to give him a platform to spew his redundant rhetoric. Once I reference this article, you understand what I'm talking about. Like, yeah, Harper, yeah, we all know populism is on the rise there, man. We didn't need you to come out of hibernation to inform us of that fact. But the simple fact of the matter is, he did make some very valid points. But once again, a broken clock can be right twice a day as well. So does he deserve any credibility? No. We're talking about the man, the leader of the Conservative Party that did all the auto bailouts, the big bank bailouts, created Bill C-51, so he could spy and snoop on and invade all of our privacies in Canada, was in charge of the Canadian government during the Edward Snowden revelations, and was one of the biggest warmongers in modern Canadian history. Like, come on. I mean, seriously, though, we're going to give this guy any credibility? Now, I'm not going to skip over the fact that I brought up not just the auto bailouts, but all of the bank bailouts, all of the banks in Canada, the big banks, Royal Bank, Scotiabank, TD, CIBC, all 6 of them. They were all bailed out to the tune of $114 billion. And I am getting really sick and tired of idiots like Harper or Trudeau or Morneau or any of these other dipshits in all the establishment political parties that keep putting forth this bullshit narrative that Canada got to avoid the Great Recession and come out on top in comparison to all the other G7, G8, or G20 countries. That is absolute bullshit. It's a complete lie. It's a complete farce. And you don't have to listen to my rhetoric. The facts are out there for anyone. And I'm going to make sure that everyone out there at least has the ability and capacity to find them by linking them in the description of this video, or maybe even showing you right here and now a sample of that proof.
Good morning. My name is Bruce Campbell. I'm the Executive Director of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. The conventional narrative about the performance of Canada's big banks during the financial crisis goes as follows. While American banks bet heavily on subprime real estate and had extensive shadow bank holdings, Canadian banks did not. Due to Canada's more conservative banking culture and better regulation, Canadian banks, the story goes, didn't need a bailout. The bank's strength allowed them to come through the crisis with relative ease, needing only liquidity support from the government. However, the details of exactly how much each Canadian bank received, when they received it, and what they put up as collateral has remained locked away at CMHC and the Bank of Canada. Not even access to information requests have been able to free this information. Today, the CCPA is publishing a study by David McDonald, The Big Bank's Big Secret, which provides the first public estimates of the emergency funds taken by Canadian banks from CMHC, the Bank of Canada, and the U.S. Federal Reserve. The report bases its estimates on publicly available data from CMHC, the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, the U.S. Federal Reserve, the Bank of Canada, as well as quarterly reports from the banks themselves. The report was subjected to external review by 4 economists. I'll now turn it over to the report's author, David McDonald.
Thanks, Bruce. I think a lot of Canadians would be surprised to learn that Canada's banks drew support from not one country but 2 during the financial crisis, Canada and the US. And I think a lot of Canadians would be surprised to learn that Canada's Big 5 banks drew on support for not a short period of time, but an extended one from October 2008 through through June 2010. In fact, over the 1.5-year period the Canadian banks drew that support, they drew it much longer than the length of the crisis itself. And I think a lot of Canadians would be surprised to learn the extent of the support received by Canadian banks. In the report that we're publishing today, I estimate that at peak, Canadian banks received $114 billion worth of support. This figure is equivalent to 7% of Canada's GDP, or the size of Canada's economy, in 2009. Put another way, the support was worth $3,400 for every man, woman, and child in the country. For comparison's sake, the bank support programs were worth approximately 10 times more than the auto bailout programs, for which Canadians put up $14 billion and for which the loan portion has been repaid. During the financial crisis, Canadian banks drew support from not one, not two, but three separate programs in Canada and the US. The first was from the US Federal Reserve, from which they took loans worth at peak $33 billion converted to Canadian dollars. Second is loans from the Bank of Canada, from which they took $41 billion at peak. And third, CMHC purchased $69 billion worth of mortgages from the banks over the support period. As you can see from the chart on my left, the three largest recipients of aid were Scotiabank, Royal Bank, and TD Bank, receiving an estimated $25 to $26 billion at peak. CIBC received somewhat less money at $21 billion at peak, and the Bank of Montreal, for its part, received an estimated $17 billion at peak. While the bank values cluster around $20 to $25 billion, the size of the banks is in fact quite different. Royal Bank, for instance, is Canada's biggest bank, and in fact, the biggest publicly traded company in the country. Whereas, for comparison's sake, the Bank of Montreal is about a third the size of Royal. And so when we look at the amount of aid received, it's important to adjust those figures for the size of the banks. And I think there it's really where we see the depth of the crisis for Canadian banks. On the relative chart to my right, we can see that three banks, Scotiabank, Bank of Montreal, and CIBC, at some point during the financial crisis, received aid worth more than the value of the companies themselves. Put another way, each of these three banks, at some point, it would have been less expensive to have purchased every single one of the shares in those banks rather than provide them with the support that they received. And so, while our politicians were trumpeting the soundness of the Canadian banking system on the global stage, three of Canada's banks were at some point underwater, relying on government support programs to get by. CIBC, in particular, received an estimated peak 1.5 times the value of the company, and I estimate that for the first 3 months of 2009, it spent the better part of that period underwater. The federal government claims that it was providing liquidity support and acting as a backstop. However, the details released today, and with the details released today, it looks a lot more like a bailout to me. Whatever we call it, it's clear that the support provided for Canadian banks was much more substantial than Canadians were led to believe.
Anyways, this is all in reference to an article of the Globe and Mail, opinion piece by Harper, with a headline, "Populism's rise points to real problems in our world. We ignore it at our peril." Oh, man, if it's so good that Harper come out to tell us that populism's on the rise, not just around the world, but even here in Canada. Oh, it's a good thing he came out of hibernation, like I say, to tell us, because it's, apparently we would be all just, really? I didn't know that, Harper. Anyways, I'm not going to read from this article. Well, not all the crap, because all he's doing is spewing and regurgitating things that we all know about. But I will go down far enough in the article, which is, what, 3/4 of the way down. And yeah, that's a long, exhaustive article to read, but that's the thing. I leave no stone unturned. I don't just read a headline or the first few sentences or the first paragraph or two. I pay attention and read entire articles, which I know a lot of people might not do, but hey, I do. All the way down, like I say, like basically almost to the end of this article, this is what really piqued my interest. In Canada, we have not been experiencing the political disruption that other Western countries have felt. It is not hard to figure out why. We had no bank bailouts. Let me repeat that one more time. we had no bank bailouts. Really, Harper? Really? Explain this.
Today, the CCPA is publishing a study by David McDonald, The Big Bank's Big Secret, which provides the first public estimates of the emergency funds taken by Canadian banks from CMHC, the Bank of Canada, and the U.S. Federal Reserve. The report bases its estimates on publicly available data from CMHC, the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, the U.S. Federal Reserve, the Bank of Canada, as well as quarterly reports from the banks themselves.
Our recession, though significant, was relatively shallow and short, and the populist conservative approach my government took over the decade in office sustained modest economic growth that was shared across the various income brackets. Yeah, see that $114 billion worth of bank bailouts and bailing out the auto sector. In other words, using future taxpayers, because it aren't even the present taxpayers that's paying for this. Because you see your income tax bills raised to the point where any of this is going to be actually paid off? No, actually, you're seeing debts actually increase, right? Because they're looking to use future and successive generations and the unborn to pay for this. So they just put it on the government credit card and are hoping that they could slip that kind of immoral theft of future productive wealth of the unborn under the door to these banksters and these crony corporatists without Canadians even noticing. But hey, once again, like I've said already in this video, people like me, I pay attention. Yeah, you might be able to sell your bullshit to people that don't pay attention, but it don't work with me, Harper. And, Trudeau liberals and anyone else out there, you want to try to pull the wool over the Canadians' eyes? Well, it's not going to happen on my watch. I continue to believe that our political longevity and success was thanks to our focus on the challenges facing working people and their families. Day in and day out, I served with colleagues who were substantive people, who worked hard and who were committed to things bigger than themselves. Once again, not going to give them any, you're not going to get to spew a bunch of your bullshit political rhetoric that maybe that you're going to use as cover to help usher in Scheer as the next inept conservative leader in Canada. Not going to happen. I'll post a link to this article for those of you who do want to read it and at least confirm to what I am saying and to the facts that I'm presenting now in opposition to this political rhetoric, these lies, these absolute lies, folks. That's all they are. Because like I said, whether it's Bill C-51, the auto bailouts, the bank bailouts, or the constant banging of the war drums, Harper, please. The reason why he was kicked to the back of the bus and basically relegated to the dustbins of history, and people chose Trudeau liberals of all people. But hey, that's how bad conservatives did. And the Canadian people said, no, we're tired of your crap, Harper. Goodbye. And just think of how desperate Canadians were to choose the Trudeau liberals, of course. Well, I mean, where else were they going to go? NDP? No, Canadians aren't that foolish. They're not that naive. They're not stupid enough to bring in a full-on socialist regime at the federal level in this country. And I'm very grateful, Canadians, for that. But yeah, Canadians were out there looking on the political landscape, and they were like, well, we got to pick another option here. So, Harper, you can pretend all you want that you were, relevant? No. The Liberals were as corrupt could be, and Canadians got rid of them, and they give you a few chances. And you pulled the wool over their eyes for a while, but eventually they could see through the fog and seen your bullshit for what it is. And I'm showing you that we still see your bullshit, and we're not falling for it anymore. Which is why Maxime Bernier and the People's Party of Canada, that's going to relegate you conservatives, or I don't even know why I call you conservatives. I don't even know why I call liberals, because neither of you are anything even remotely resembling what the defined meanings of those words actually entail. You're a bunch of inept collectivists, socialists, communists, fascists that try to use the play on words, legalese, and doublespeak to constantly confuse and confound the masses. Not anymore. Not in the age of information. Not when social media allows us to have our own voice. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.